Imagine standing by the ocean. The waves rise and fall, and no matter how hard you try, you cannot command them to stay still. This is life. This is the dance of our relationships. We try to hold on, to control, to mold what we experience into something permanent. But life moves like the ocean's tide, indifferent to our desires. So how do we learn to detach without becoming cold, without closing our hearts? Here are 5 rules that guide us in this art of letting go. An art that frees both the heart and the soul. The first rule is to embrace the impermanence of all things. Every connection, every moment is like a fleeting breeze. It comes, it stays for a time, and then it drifts away. If we resist this truth, we suffer. So let us learn to see relationships as waves. They rise, they break, and then they retreat. In doing so, we honor them as they are rather than as what we wish them to be. We often tie our happiness to how we expect others to act, to what we hope relationships will bring us, but expectations are chains that bind us to disappointment. When we release them, we free ourselves and others from the burdens of our hopes. People are not ours to control, and relationships at their core are not about fulfillment of our desires. They are about experience, shared moments, and mutual growth. Detaching emotionally begins when we stop expecting people to meet our needs. It's easy to entwine our identity with those we care for. I am a lover, I am a friend. These become definitions of who we are. But when we define ourselves through others, we lose the essence of our own being. Detach from the storylines you've written for yourself. You are not the roles you play in someone else's life. You are something far more expansive. Your soul does not belong to any relationship. It belongs to the universe. Mindfulness teaches us to observe without judgment. When feelings of attachment arise, watch them as though they were clouds passing through a wide open sky. Don't resist, but also don't cling. Feelings are visitors, not permanent residents. By practicing mindfulness, we learn to sit with our emotions, observe them, and let them go. It's this awareness that allows detachment to be not a cold act, but a compassionate one. Letting go doesn't mean pushing away. It means accepting the nature of things, allowing them to come and go as they will. It means allowing someone to exist freely without needing them to fill an empty space within you. In letting go, you're not abandoning, but rather you're embracing a greater truth, the freedom to love without ownership, the grace to care without controlling, and the wisdom to understand that detachment is not the end of love, but the beginning of inner peace. In the end, emotional detachment isn't about severing connections. It's about loosening the grip of attachment. It's about seeing relationships as part of the flow of life, not as possessions to cling to. When we detach, we don't lose love. We transform it into something deeper, more profound, and more liberating. Like the waves of the ocean, we learn to flow, to let go, and to embrace the freedom that comes from understanding that nothing and no one can truly be held forever. Imagine for a moment that you are holding a handful of sand. The tighter you squeeze, the more it slips through your fingers. No matter how desperately you try to keep it, the sand continues to fall away, grain by grain. This is the nature of life, of relationships, of every experience we encounter. Everything we touch, every person we meet, every feeling we hold is transient, like the sand. To resist this truth is to invite suffering into our hearts. It's not easy to accept that nothing lasts forever. We are wired to cling to the things that bring us joy, to the people who make us feel loved, to the moments that make us feel alive. But to cling is to misunderstand the essence of life itself. Life is not static. It is a river, constantly moving, constantly changing. The very act of holding on too tightly causes the pain we so desperately wish to avoid. In truth, nothing is truly lost, because nothing was ever meant to stay. Relationships are not possessions, they are experiences. Each one, no matter how brief or long, serves a purpose in our lives. Perhaps it teaches us something, perhaps it opens our hearts, or perhaps it shows us a reflection of ourselves. But no matter what form it takes, it is part of the great dance of impermanence. To accept impermanence is not to resign ourselves to loss, but to embrace the beauty of each moment as it comes. It is to love without fear of the end, to live without fear of change. This understanding brings a quiet freedom. We learn to stop grasping at things that are meant to pass and instead appreciate their presence while they are with us. We begin to see that it is not the permanence of a relationship that gives it value, but the depth of our experience in the time we share. Letting go of the need for things to last forever allows us to be fully present. We stop worrying about the future or longing for the past, and we immerse ourselves in the now. This is where true peace lies, in the acceptance that everything, by its very nature, will one day dissolve back into the great flow of life. And this is not something to mourn, but something to celebrate. The waves of the ocean do not lament when they return to the sea, and neither should we mourn the changes in our lives. Just as the tide rises and falls, so too do the people and experiences in our world. In accepting this rhythm, we find that detachment is not a closing of the heart, but a widening of it. We learn to love with open hands, knowing that what comes will come and what goes will go, and that our peace does not depend on holding on to anything forever. In this acceptance, we find a profound serenity. We become less attached to outcomes, less fearful of endings, and more aligned with the natural flow of life. The fleeting nature of existence becomes a source of beauty, not sorrow. And in this space, we are free to love, to experience, and to let go, all with grace. Expectations are like invisible strings that bind us to the people and circumstances in our lives. We often don't realize how tightly we hold these strings, expecting others to behave a certain way, to fulfill our desires, to give us what we think we need. But the tighter we cling to these expectations, the more we set ourselves up for disappointment and frustration. Life and the people in it rarely unfold according to the plans we create in our minds. We all carry expectations, both big and small. We expect loved ones to understand us, friends to be there when we need them, and situations to turn out in our favor. But when people don't act in accordance with these unspoken rules we've set, we feel betrayed or let down. And often it's not because they've wronged us, but because we place the burden of our own happiness on their shoulders. To release expectations is to release the need for control. It is to recognize that other people are not here to fulfill our desires or to meet our needs. They are on their own journeys, living their own experiences, and we cannot shape them to fit our mold. When we cling to expectations, we are trying to shape the world according to our will, but the world moves freely, unaffected by our personal wants. This release doesn't mean we stop caring for others or that we abandon hope in our relationships. It simply means we let go of the rigid belief that things must unfold in a certain way for us to be happy. When we stop expecting, we begin to see others for who they truly are, not as projections of what we want them to be. We open ourselves to accepting people in their full complexity, without trying to force them into roles they may never fit. In this letting go, we find freedom for ourselves and for those around us. We free ourselves from the constant disappointment that comes from unmet expectations, and we free others from the pressure to be something they are not. Relationships, in turn, become more authentic. We are no longer trying to change or fix people to meet our needs. Instead, we learn to appreciate them as they are, with all their flaws and virtues. The act of releasing expectations also allows us to experience life with a sense of openness. We stop clinging to specific outcomes and begin to embrace whatever unfolds. Life becomes less about achieving specific goals or reaching defined destinations and more about experiencing the journey itself. We learn to trust the process, knowing that things may not go as we envisioned, but that they will unfold as they are meant to. When we release expectations, we step into a space of acceptance. We accept that not everything will go according to plan, that not everyone will act the way we want them to, and that this is perfectly fine. In fact, it is a gift. By letting go, we create space for life to surprise us, to bring us experiences and connections we might never have imagined. We allow others to be who they are, and in doing so, we allow ourselves to be free from the chains of control and the burden of always seeking what we think we need. Ultimately, to release expectations is to surrender to the flow of life. It is to recognize that peace doesn't come from controlling outcomes, but from accepting them as they are. This doesn't mean we stop dreaming or hoping, but we hold our desires with a light touch, knowing that whatever comes our way will come in its own time and in its own form. In this release, we find that life becomes not a series of disappointments, but a series of gifts, each moment unfolding exactly as it should, in perfect harmony with the greater rhythm of existence. In the course of our lives, we often construct our identities around the roles we play and the relationships we hold dear. We become the partner, the friend, the caregiver, the person who is loved or depended upon. These identities feel solid and comforting because they give us a sense of place and purpose in the world. Yet there's a quiet danger in this. We begin to believe that we are these roles. We forget that beneath these layers there is a deeper self, unbound by the labels and identities we adopt. Attachment to identity is subtle but powerful. It happens when we start defining ourselves through our connections with others. I am significant because I am loved by this person, or I matter because I am needed in this relationship. While these thoughts bring comfort, they also tether us to a fragile sense of self, one that is dependent on external validation. The problem arises when relationships shift or end, and the roles we've played no longer fit. Without realizing it, we may feel lost, as if a part of ourselves has been taken away. But our true essence is not confined to these roles. Who we are is far more expansive than the identities we wear in the world. The roles we play are temporary, fluid, and ever-changing, but the self, the pure awareness beneath all these layers, remains constant. It is untouched by the coming and going of relationships. When we overly attach to a role, we trap ourselves in a narrow view of existence. We become the actor who believes they are the character, forgetting that they can step off the stage at any moment and still be whole. Non-attachment to identity invites us to loosen our grip on these labels. It asks us to look beyond the surface of who we think we are and connect with the deeper essence within us. This does not mean we stop being partners, friends, or caregivers. It means we recognize these roles as part of our experience, but not as the totality of our being. We can engage fully in relationships without losing ourselves in them. When we detach from the identities tied to our relationships, we allow ourselves to flow more freely through life's changes. The end of a relationship no longer feels like the loss of self, but simply the end of one chapter in our ever-evolving story. We remain grounded in the awareness that we are complete, whether we are in a relationship or not. Our worth is not tied to how others see us or how we fit into their lives. It resides in our own being, in the quiet center of our existence that remains unchanged by the shifting sands of circumstance. This detachment from identity also brings a profound sense of freedom. We no longer feel the need to cling to relationships out of fear that we will lose ourselves if they end. We are no longer bound by the expectations of others or the roles we think we must play to be valued. Instead, we can move through the world with a sense of openness and ease, knowing that we are free to be ourselves in any situation, in any relationship, without needing to be defined by it. In this way, non-attachment to identity does not diminish the depth of our connections with others. On the contrary, it enhances them. When we are not clinging to a role or a label, we can engage with people more authentically. We no longer need them to validate who we are, which allows us to love them more freely, without the weight of expectations or the fear of losing ourselves in the process. Ultimately, non-attachment to identity is about recognizing the fluidity of life and the impermanence of all the labels we wear. It is about understanding that who we are is not defined by our relationships, our roles, or the stories we tell ourselves. We are the awareness that experiences all of these things, yet remains beyond them. In this recognition, we find true liberation, a freedom that allows us to engage fully in the dance of life, knowing that we are always whole, no matter what role we may play. In our fast-paced lives, we often find ourselves swept up by emotions, thoughts, and the constant pull of distractions. We react to situations without truly understanding them, driven by patterns and habits that keep us tethered to stress and attachment. Mindfulness is the practice of stepping out of this whirlwind. It is the art of being present, fully immersed in the moment, with an open awareness that observes without judgment. By practicing mindfulness, we cultivate a deeper connection with ourselves and the world, allowing us to detach from the noise and find clarity in the midst of chaos. Mindfulness teaches us to observe our emotions as they arise without getting lost in them. Imagine your mind as a vast, clear sky and your emotions as passing clouds. They come and go, constantly shifting and changing, but the sky itself remains untouched. When we practice mindfulness, we begin to understand that our thoughts and feelings are not permanent. They are transient like those clouds, and they don't define who we are. In moments of emotional turbulence, mindfulness allows us to pause, to watch the emotion without becoming overwhelmed by it. Often we become so entangled with our emotions that they shape our actions and reactions. When someone hurts us, we may immediately react in anger or retreat into sadness, believing that these feelings are the only truth. But mindfulness creates a space between the emotion and the reaction. It allows us to witness our feelings without immediately acting on them. We can observe the anger or sadness rising within us, acknowledge it, and then choose how to respond rather than reacting impulsively. This simple act of observation, of witnessing our emotions without judgment, shifts us from being controlled by our feelings to being in control of them. We begin to understand that emotions, like all things, are temporary. They are waves in the ocean of our consciousness, and if we don't cling to them or resist them, they will eventually pass. Mindfulness helps us recognize that just because we feel something intensely in a moment, it doesn't mean it will last forever. Through this practice, we also come to understand that many of the stories we tell ourselves are just that, stories. The mind has a tendency to spin narratives around our experiences, often amplifying our fears, worries, or desires. For example, a single moment of conflict with someone can lead us to create an entire narrative about how they don't care about us, or how we are unworthy of love. These stories are often untrue, yet they shape how we feel and act. Mindfulness brings us back to the present, grounding us in the reality of what is actually happening, rather than the mind's interpretation of it. By staying present, we begin to see things as they truly are, without the distortions of past wounds or future anxieties. When we practice mindfulness, we learn to observe our thoughts and emotions without getting pulled into their web. We notice when we're holding on to something too tightly, whether it's a painful memory or an expectation of how things should be. This awareness allows us to gently release the grip, to let go of the need to control or fix everything, and to simply be with what is. Mindfulness doesn't require us to suppress or deny our emotions. In fact, it encourages us to feel them fully, but with a sense of curiosity and compassion. When we experience sadness or anger, mindfulness invites us to sit with those feelings, to explore them without trying to change or avoid them. In doing so, we often discover that beneath the surface, our emotions hold valuable insights about ourselves. We learn that it's okay to feel, but that we don't have to be ruled by those feelings. Moreover, mindfulness extends beyond our internal world to how we engage with others. It teaches us to be fully present in our interactions, listening deeply and responding with awareness rather than reacting out of habit or expectation. When we are mindful in relationships, we can meet people where they are, without projecting our own fears or desires onto them. We can approach each moment with openness, allowing space for genuine connection to emerge. The beauty of mindfulness lies in its simplicity. It's not about achieving some higher state or becoming detached from life. It's about fully engaging with life as it is. Whether we are washing dishes, having a conversation, or sitting in silence, mindfulness invites us to bring our full attention to the moment. It's in these small, everyday acts of presence that we begin to transform how we relate to ourselves and the world around us. In practicing mindfulness, we gradually develop the ability to step back from the constant chatter of the mind. We learn to live with a sense of ease, moving through life with greater clarity and calm. We no longer feel the need to cling to every passing emotion or thought, because we understand that we are not defined by them. In this space of awareness, we find a profound sense of freedom, a freedom that comes from simply being present, moment to moment, without attachment or resistance. There is a quiet strength in knowing that at our core we are whole and complete on our own. It is a realization that goes beyond mere independence or self-reliance. It touches on the deeper understanding that our sense of peace, contentment, and fulfillment does not need to be tethered to anyone else. Too often we look to others to fill the gaps in our lives, seeking comfort, validation, or happiness from relationships, believing that we need someone else to make us feel complete. But true self-sufficiency is the recognition that everything we seek already exists within us. To cultivate self-sufficiency is not about rejecting the importance of relationships or isolating ourselves from others. Rather, it is about learning to stand firmly in our own being, knowing that our inner world is rich enough to sustain us, no matter what external circumstances arise. When we become self-sufficient, we stop placing the weight of our emotional well-being in the hands of others. We understand that while relationships can bring joy, connection, and growth, they are not the source of our inner peace. This process of cultivating self-sufficiency begins with the quiet work of turning inward. It is about recognizing that much of our emotional dependence on others stems from a fear of being alone or from a belief that we are incomplete without someone else. When we place too much of our emotional and energy on others, we inadvertently give them control over our happiness. If they behave in ways that meet our expectations, we feel secure. If they don't, we feel abandoned or unworthy. This emotional dependence keeps us in a constant state of vulnerability, always waiting for others to validate our sense of self. To become self-sufficient, we must learn to fill our own cup. This means discovering the practices, thoughts, and activities that nourish us from within. It means cultivating a deep relationship with ourselves, where we understand and appreciate our own company. We begin to see that the love and attention we often seek from others is something we can give to ourselves. When we engage in this process of self-care and self-awareness, we slowly realize that we are more than enough, that we do not need anyone else to complete us. Self-sufficiency is not about shutting down emotionally or closing ourselves off to others. It's about finding a balance where we can share our lives with others without becoming emotionally dependent on them. We learn to enjoy companionship, but we no longer need it to feel whole. Relationships become a source of joy, not a crutch for our insecurities. We can be alone without feeling lonely because we are connected to the deeper parts of ourselves. As we grow more self-sufficient, we begin to see that the source of our happiness is internal, not external. We stop seeking validation from the outside world and start valuing our own opinions, our own presence, and our own company. This doesn't mean we stop caring about others or their perspectives, but it means we no longer allow their opinions or actions to define our worth. Our sense of self becomes grounded, unshakable, because it is rooted within us rather than dependent on the fluctuating tides of others' behavior. In cultivating self-sufficiency, we also develop emotional resilience. Life is unpredictable and relationships are impermanent. But when we know that we can rely on ourselves, we are less shaken by the changes and challenges that come our way. We understand that while people may come and go, we will always have ourselves to lean on. This inner strength allows us to navigate the ups and downs of life with grace and confidence. Self-sufficiency does not mean we never ask for help or that we do not need others. It is about recognizing that while others can support us, they are not responsible for our happiness. We take ownership of our emotional well-being, knowing that we have the tools to nurture ourselves no matter what happens. This sense of inner resourcefulness creates a foundation of stability that no external relationship can provide. In relationships, this self-sufficiency allows us to love more freely and fully. When we are not emotionally dependent on others, we can love them without the need to control or possess. We are not constantly seeking reassurance or validation because we already know our worth. This kind of love is liberating. It is love that is given freely, without the burden of expectation or neediness. And in turn, we allow others to love us without feeling the pressure to fulfill roles they may not be capable of filling. Ultimately, cultivating self-sufficiency is about reclaiming our power. It is about realizing that we are enough as we are, and that our happiness does not hinge on someone else's presence or approval. When we cultivate this inner strength, we become unshakable, able to navigate the world with a sense of peace and fulfillment that comes from within. We understand that while relationships can enrich our lives, they do not define us. We are whole always, whether we are with others or standing alone. In a world that often equates solitude with loneliness, we sometimes forget the profound gifts that come with being alone. Solitude is not something to fear or avoid, but something to embrace as a necessary space for growth, reflection, and renewal. When we allow ourselves to sit in the quiet of our own presence, we discover aspects of ourselves that are often overshadowed by the noise and distractions of daily life. Solitude is not about isolation, it is about reconnecting with the core of who we are, apart from the roles and expectations imposed by the outside world. There is a subtle power in being comfortable with our own company. In solitude, we are given the opportunity to truly listen to the thoughts and emotions that arise when there is no one else around to distract us. This is where clarity emerges. The layers of external influence fall away, and what remains is an unfiltered reflection of ourselves. It is in these moments that we begin to understand our true nature, not the version shaped by the needs or desires of others, but the essence of who we are when no one else is watching. Solitude provides the space for healing. In the quiet, we can process our emotions, reflect on our experiences, and come to terms with the parts of ourselves that need attention. In a world that encourages constant interaction, we rarely have the chance to sit with our feelings and let them unfold naturally. In solitude, there is no pressure to rush the process. We can be patient with ourselves, allowing the wounds of the past to surface and heal without distraction or suppression. It is in this space that we come to understand that healing doesn't come from others, but from within. To embrace solitude is to embrace the fullness of our own existence. We often look to others to fill the empty spaces within us, believing that companionship is the antidote to our loneliness. But solitude teaches us that we are not empty, we are whole. The quiet moments spent alone are not voids to be filled, but sacred opportunities to deepen our connection with ourselves. In this space, we realize that our worth does not depend on being in a relationship or surrounded by others. We are enough just as we are in our solitude. Embracing solitude also shifts our relationship with time. When we are alone, the pace of life slows down. We are no longer caught in the rush of social obligations or external demands. Instead, we can move at our own rhythm, giving ourselves the time and space to engage in activities that nourish our spirit. Whether it's reading, meditating, walking in nature, or simply sitting in silence, these solitary moments become acts of self-care, grounding us in the present and reminding us of the richness of life when we are fully present with ourselves. Many fear solitude because they associate it with loneliness, but these two states are not the same. Loneliness is the longing for connection, the feeling of being cut off from others. Solitude, on the other hand, is a conscious choice to be alone, to embrace the stillness and quiet as a means of connecting more deeply with oneself. In solitude, we find that we are never truly alone, for we are always in the company of our own thoughts, our own breath, and the vastness of our inner world. By embracing solitude, we also cultivate a deeper sense of self-reliance. We learn that we don't need to rely on others for validation, comfort, or fulfillment. These things come from within. When we are comfortable in solitude, we are less likely to seek out relationships or distractions for the wrong reasons. We no longer need to fill the silence with meaningless chatter or surround ourselves with people just to avoid being alone. Instead, we engage with the world from a place of inner completeness, knowing that our solitude is a source of strength, not a weakness. In time, we come to cherish the moments of solitude as essential to our well-being. We realize that solitude is where we recharge, where we reconnect with our true selves, and where we find the inspiration to engage with the world in a more meaningful way. It is a space for creativity, introspection, and peace. And when we return to the company of others, we do so with a deeper understanding of ourselves and a greater appreciation for the richness of both solitude and connection. Ultimately, embracing solitude is about embracing ourselves. It is about finding peace in our own presence and recognizing that we are whole and complete with or without others. In solitude, we meet ourselves in the truest sense, and from this place of self-understanding, we can move through life with a sense of freedom and fulfillment that is not dependent on anyone or anything outside of us. Solitude becomes not a place of isolation, but a sanctuary, a sacred space where we discover the vastness of our inner world and the quiet joy of simply being. Compassion is the open-hearted desire to care for and support others, but it becomes complicated when it transforms into attachment. We often confuse loving someone deeply with the need to hold on tightly to make sure they fit into our vision of how things should be. Compassion, in its truest form, is love without the strings of control or possession. It is the ability to care for another person without being consumed by the need to change them, to keep them close, or to prevent them from experiencing their own path, even when that path leads away from us. When we cling to others, we turn our love into something conditional. We expect them to meet our needs, to stay in our lives, to act in ways that make us feel secure. But true compassion is not about fulfilling our desires. It's about seeing the other person for who they are, not for who we want them to be. It's about respecting their journey, even if it leads them in directions that are difficult for us to accept. Compassion, when it is free from clinging, allows us to love someone completely while still giving them the space to grow, to change, and to walk their own path. To practice compassion without clinging, we must first learn to release the fear of loss. The root of clinging often lies in our fear that if we do not hold on tightly, we will lose something or someone essential to our happiness. But this fear is based on the illusion that others are responsible for our emotional well-being. When we are compassionate without clinging, we understand that love is not about possession or control, it is about freedom. We can offer our love and support without expecting anything in return, and in doing so, we create space for authentic connection to flourish. This kind of compassion requires a deep trust in the unfolding of life. It asks us to believe that even when people move in and out of our lives, even when things do not go according to our hopes, there is still a deeper order at work. We can care deeply for others while also accepting that their lives and choices are not ours to control. Compassion without clinging means recognizing that we are not responsible for saving or fixing anyone, that each person has their own path to walk, and sometimes that path may diverge from our own. In this space of non-clinging, relationships become more fluid and natural. We can love without the pressure of trying to hold on. We can offer help without the need for recognition or reciprocation. Compassion becomes an expression of our own fullness, not a strategy to fill a void within ourselves. And because we are not grasping or clinging, the love we give becomes more expansive, more freeing for both ourselves and the people we care about. Compassion without clinging also allows us to remain present in our relationships. Often when we cling, we are focused on the future, on keeping the relationship intact, on ensuring that the person stays in our life in a certain way. But in doing so, we miss the beauty of the present moment. When we release the need to control the outcome, we can fully experience the connection as it is right now, without the burden of expectations. We can listen more deeply, love more freely, and appreciate the moments we share without trying to extend them beyond their natural course. This form of compassion also extends inward toward ourselves. Just as we must practice non-clinging with others, we must learn to offer ourselves the same gentle, non-possessive love. Often we hold on to rigid ideas about who we should be, clinging to an image of ourselves that no longer serves us. Compassion without clinging means allowing ourselves the space to grow, to make mistakes, and to change without judgment or harsh self-criticism. It means embracing our own journey with the same care and openness that we offer to others. Ultimately, compassion without clinging leads to a deeper sense of freedom and peace. It frees us from the constant struggle to hold on to things or people, allowing us to experience life and relationships with greater fluidity and ease. We learn that love is not about possessing or controlling, but about letting go and trusting that what is meant to be will unfold in its own time. In this freedom, our compassion becomes more genuine, more expansive, and more profound, enriching both our own lives and the lives of those we touch. Letting go is one of the most challenging and liberating experiences in life. It's an art that requires us to release our grip on what we think should be and open ourselves to the flow of what is. At its core, letting go is an act of trust, trusting that life is unfolding exactly as it should, even when it doesn't align with our desires or expectations. It's the recognition that holding on too tightly to people, outcomes, or situations only creates tension and suffering, while letting go brings a sense of peace and freedom. We often cling to things because we believe they define us, or because we fear that without them we will be left incomplete or lost. But the truth is, nothing outside of ourselves can ever provide us with lasting fulfillment. Letting go is about realizing that our sense of self and happiness does not depend on external circumstances. It's about acknowledging that life is in a constant state of change, and that trying to resist this natural flow only leads to frustration and disappointment. The art of letting go begins with acceptance. We must first accept that life is impermanent, that people and situations come and go, and that change is inevitable. Once we accept this, we can stop resisting the inevitable and start flowing with it. Letting go doesn't mean we stop caring or that we become detached from life. It means we stop clinging to the idea that we can control everything. We understand that life has its own rhythm, and we must learn to dance with it rather than trying to force our own tempo. Often we hold on because we are afraid of what will happen if we let go. We fear the unknown, the emptiness that may follow, or the possibility of loss. But what we fail to see is that by letting go, we make space for something new to emerge. Just as a tree must shed its leaves to make room for new growth, we too must release what no longer serves us in order to allow for new possibilities. In letting go, we create space for healing, growth, and transformation. Letting go also requires us to release our need for control. We tend to believe that if we hold on tightly enough, we can shape outcomes and prevent unwanted changes. But this desire for control is an illusion. Life cannot be controlled or predicted, it can only be experienced. When we let go of the need to control, we surrender to the present moment, allowing things to unfold as they are meant to. This surrender is not a sign of weakness, but of strength. It takes courage to release our grip and trust in the process of life. Letting go is not a one-time event, but an ongoing practice. It is something we must do again and again, each time we feel the pull of attachment or the need to control. It's about releasing our expectations of how things should be and embracing what is. In relationships, it means allowing people to be who they are without trying to mold them to fit our ideals. In life, it means releasing our attachment to specific outcomes and trusting that whatever unfolds will ultimately serve our growth. As we master the art of letting go, we begin to see that what we fear losing is often not as essential as we imagined. We realize that clinging only creates suffering, while letting go brings peace. We discover that we are not defined by our attachments, and that our true strength lies in our ability to adapt, to release, and to trust in the natural flow of life. Letting go allows us to experience life with greater ease, moving with the currents rather than against them. Ultimately, letting go is an act of love both for ourselves and for others. It is an expression of faith in life's inherent wisdom, a recognition that we do not need to hold on so tightly in order to be safe or happy. By letting go, we give ourselves the freedom to live fully in the present, unburdened by the weight of past attachments or future expectations. We learn to trust that whatever is meant for us will come, and whatever is not will pass, leaving us lighter, freer, and more at peace. In the journey of emotional detachment, we come to realize that true freedom lies not in controlling or clinging, but in allowing life and relationships to flow naturally. By embracing impermanence, releasing expectations, and practicing mindfulness, we free ourselves from the burden of attachment. Cultivating self-sufficiency and embracing solitude teaches us that our well-being is not dependent on others, while compassion without clinging allows us to love deeply without possession. Finally, the art of letting go brings a profound sense of peace, reminding us that life is a dance of change and transformation. In learning to let go, we find not only emotional liberation, but a deeper connection to ourselves and the world around us. The beauty of life is not in holding tight, but in the graceful act of releasing, trusting that in every ending there is a new beginning.